What would you do if you found two elderly strangers sitting alone in the rain, abandoned by their own child? Most people would walk past. Emma Collins almost did, but something stopped her, and what she discovered next would change 4 lives forever, including her own. There is a kind of tired that sleep cannot fix. Emma Collins knew that tired well. She was 19 years old, and most mornings she woke before the sun did, not because she wanted to, not because she was ambitious in the way people celebrated graduation ceremonies or post about on social media. She woke early because there was simply no other way to hold her life together. The apartment was small, 2 rooms on the 3rd floor of a building on Claremont Street, where the hallway always smelled faintly of someone else's dinner, and the radiator knocked like a restless neighbor trying to get your attention. The rent was $460 a month, which was, Emma often thought, approximately $460 more than she felt she had to spare. She had moved in 3 years ago when Lily was 6, after her mother passed from a sudden stroke and left behind nothing but a worn Bible, a drawer full of coupons, and the kind of silence that makes a small apartment feel enormous. Emma's father had been gone long before that. She did not speak of him often. There was no anger left in that particular direction. Just a quiet, settled absence, the way a tooth hurts for a while and then simply stops. She had Lily, and Lily, by every measure Emma used to count her blessings, was enough. Lily Collins was 9 years old and possessed the specific, unwavering confidence of a child who has been loved very deliberately. She had her mother's dark eyes and her grandmother's habit of tilting her head slightly when she was thinking hard about something. She drew pictures of animals on the back of Emma's nursing study notes. She sang quietly while she brushed her teeth. She had never, not once in her small life, complained about the apartment. Emma was halfway through her 2nd year of nursing school at Claremont Community College. She attended classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, studied whenever Lily was asleep or at school, and worked 4 shifts a week at the Sunrise Diner on 9th Avenue, the early morning shift 6 to noon, because it paid slightly better tips from the breakfast crowd and because it allowed her to pick Lily up from school in the afternoons. She had a plan. The plan was simple and enormous at the same time: finish her degree, pass her boards, get a hospital position, and give Lily a life with a little more room in it. A yard, maybe. A bedroom that was actually a bedroom and not a curtained-off corner of the living space. The plan required everything she had. On the morning our story truly begins, a Tuesday in late October, Emma woke at 5:15 to the sound of rain against the window. It was a cold, heavy, determined rain, the kind that makes the city look like it is being wrung out like a dishcloth. She packed Lily's lunch, a peanut butter sandwich, an apple, a small bag of crackers, and left a note on the refrigerator, as she always did, because Lily's school bus came at 7:15 and Emma would already be gone. The note said, as it almost always said, "Lunch is in your bag. Wear your yellow raincoat. I love you to the moon and back." And then some. Mom. She pulled on her jacket, tucked her nursing textbook into her bag alongside her uniform for her evening shift, and stepped out into the rain. She had no umbrella. The good umbrella had been Lily's, and Lily had the good umbrella. Emma walked to the bus stop on the corner of Claremont and 5th, stood under the narrow overhang, and watched the city wake up around her in the rain. A delivery truck rumbling past, a dog walker with 3 dogs and a look of profound regret. The amber glow of the diner 2 blocks down, already warm and lit. She thought, as she often did in these quiet morning minutes, about her mother. About how her mother had worked 2 jobs for most of Emma's childhood and it never once, not one single morning, failed to leave a note on the refrigerator. "Keep going," Emma told herself, not out loud. She had learned to say the important things quietly, to herself, in the spaces between everything else. Keep going. The bus came. She got on, and she had no idea, sitting in that wet seat with her textbook open on her lap, that today was the day everything was about to change. Emma's shift at the diner ended at noon. She had 3 hours before she needed to collect Lily from school. On Tuesdays, she used those hours for one thing: the library on Commerce Street, where the study tables were quiet and the Wi-Fi was reliable and a thermos of coffee could last her most of the afternoon. But the bus she needed, the number 14, ran from the Central Transit Terminal on Whitmore Avenue, and it was at that terminal, just past 12:30 in the afternoon, that Emma Collins stopped walking. She had been moving quickly, head down against the rain, thinking about her pharmacology exam the following week. when something at the edge of her vision made her slow. Two elderly people, sitting alone on a hard plastic bench near the far wall of the terminal. This, by itself, was not unusual. Bus terminals had elderly people in them all the time, but there was something in the specific quality of their stillness that caught her. Not the stillness of people resting, the stillness of people who have been waiting so long that they have stopped believing the waiting will end. The man was tall, or had been once. He sat slightly folded into himself now, a thin, white-haired gentleman in a gray overcoat that had seen better winters. He had his hands clasped in his lap and was staring at the departure board with an expression Emma could only describe as careful hope. The hope of someone who has learned not to hope too loudly. The woman beside him was small, bird-like almost, in a beige coat. She clutched a brown handbag with both hands as if it were the one solid thing in a tilting world. She was not looking at the departure board. She was looking at nothing in particular, and her lips were moving slightly, the way an older person sometimes do when they are praying or counting or simply trying to hold something together from the inside. Two suitcases stood beside them, neat, old-fashioned suitcases, the hard shell kind with brass latches. Emma almost kept walking. She told herself later, many times, that she almost kept walking, that the library was waiting, the exam was waiting, the number 14 would leave in 11 minutes. That she had enough in her own life to carry without picking up someone else's. But she stopped. She crossed the terminal and stood a few feet from the bench, and the man looked up, and something in his expression, relief mixed with a very old weariness, the expression of a person who has been surprised by kindness before and been burned by the surprise, made Emma's chest tighten in a way she did not entirely understand. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm sorry to bother you. Are you all right?" The woman looked up then too. Her eyes were blue and very clear, the way old eyes sometimes are, as though the years have refined them down to something essential. "We're waiting for our son," the man said. His voice was measured, careful, dignified. "He was supposed to collect us at 8 this morning." Emma looked at the clock on the terminal wall. It was 12:37. "It's been 5 hours," she said, not accusingly, just carefully. "Yes," the man said, and then, with a small, precise nod, "It has been 5 hours. Have you tried calling him?" The woman, she would tell Emma her name was Eleanor, Harold's wife of 52 years, reached into her handbag and produced a cell phone, an older model, small and silver. She pressed the button on the side and the screen stayed black. "It died about an hour ago," Eleanor said. Her voice was soft and very composed, the composure of a woman who has had a great deal of practice not showing how frightened she is. "We didn't bring the charger. Richard always charges it for us when we visit." "Richard is your son?" "Yes." Harold straightened slightly. "Richard Winters. He's very busy. He works in finance." "It's possible something came up." Emma looked at them for a long moment, at the suitcases, at the empty terminal around them, at the rain pressing against the glass outside. She sat down on the bench. "My name is Emma," she said. "Can I sit with you for a few minutes?" The man's careful hope shifted into something warmer. "We would be glad of the company," he said. "I'm Harold. This is my wife, Eleanor." Emma missed the number 14. She had already decided to. Emma used the terminal's public charging station to power up Eleanor's phone while she sat with them and listened. The Winters had come from Maplewood, Ohio, a 4-hour bus ride. They had bought tickets 3 weeks ago, confirmed with Richard by phone the previous Thursday. Harold had written the date on the calendar in the kitchen, the way he wrote everything important. October 22nd. Today. Richard was their only child. He lived in a downtown apartment in a building with a doorman and a gym on the second floor. Harold spoke of this with a particular brand of parental pride that Emma recognized immediately, the pride of a parent who measures their own worth partly through their child's success. She had seen it in her mother's eyes the day Emma made the honor roll in 10th grade. It was a tender, earned pride, and it made something behind Emma's sternum ache quietly. When Eleanor's phone had charged enough to turn on, Emma dialed Richard's number for them. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. She tried a 3rd time, and on the 4th ring someone picked up. "Mom." The voice was flat. Not worried, not relieved, flat. in the particular way of someone who has been caught doing something they would prefer not to address directly. "I've been meaning to call." Emma handed the phone to Eleanor, and Harold leaned in close to listen. What followed was a conversation Emma would think about for a long time afterward. Richard said there had been a mix-up. He said he thought the visit was next week. He said he had been in meetings all day. He said, "This happens, these things happen." He was sorry, but what did they expect him to do? He was a busy man. Harold's jaw tightened. Eleanor pressed the phone to her ear and looked at the floor. "Richard," Harold said carefully when Eleanor passed him the phone, "we confirmed the date on Thursday. You said October the 22nd. I wrote it on the calendar." "Dad!" Richard's voice was patient in the particular way that is not patient at all. That is in fact the opposite of patient. The tone of someone managing a person they consider beneath managing. "I don't know what to tell you. I'll send you a car to take you back to the station. You can go home and we'll reschedule. We've been sitting here for 5 hours. A pause. "I understand that. I'm sorry, but I can't really. I have a dinner tonight." Emma, sitting beside Harold, heard every word. She took out her own phone and dialed the non-emergency police line because the terminal was now closing and these two people had nowhere to go. And because she was 19 years old and her mother had raised her to understand that when someone needs help, you get help. The officer who responded, a patient young man named Officer Garcia, ran a welfare check and confirmed that Richard Winters was indeed at his apartment. Fine, not in any accident. He left a note with his supervisor. Richard called back 40 minutes later. His tone had not softened. He said he would send a car to take his parents back to the bus station. He said it again. He had a dinner. "Mr. Winters," Emma said, because Harold had handed her the phone with trembling hands and she had taken it without quite deciding to. "Your parents have been sitting on a bench in an empty bus terminal since 8 this morning. The terminal is closing. It is raining. They have nowhere to go tonight. With respect, sir, a dinner can be rescheduled." Silence. "Who is this?" Richard said. "My name is Emma Collins. I'm a stranger who sat with your parents because their son didn't come." Another silence. Longer. "I'll sort it out," Richard said, and hung up. He did not sort it out. No car came. The terminal closed at 7. Emma stood outside in the rain with Harold and Eleanor in their 2 suitcases and made a decision so quietly and naturally that she barely noticed she was making it. "You'll stay with us tonight," she said. "My daughter and I have a small apartment. It's not much, but it's warm and dry and you are welcome in it." Harold looked at her for a long moment. His eyes were dark and very still. "Young lady," he said, "you don't know us." "No," Emma said, "but I know enough." Lily Collins opened the door of apartment 3C at 7:45 p.m., saw 2 elderly strangers standing behind her mother in the hallway, and did the thing she almost always did when presented with a new situation. She tilted her head slightly to the left and considered. "Are they staying for dinner?" she asked. "If that's all right with you," Emma said. Lily considered another half-second. "I already made the pasta," she said, stepping back to let everyone in. "There's plenty." This was not entirely true. Emma would later discover that Lily had quietly added an extra cup of water to the pot and stretched the pasta further than pasta is generally meant to be stretched. But Harold Winters would tell Emma weeks later that it was, without question, the finest pasta he had eaten in years. Emma suspected this was about more than pasta. The apartment was exactly what Emma had described. Small, warm, and not much. A living room with a couch and a coffee table stacked with textbooks. A kitchen the size of a generous closet. 2 sleeping areas separated by a curtain and a bookshelf. But there were Lily's drawings on the refrigerator and a crocheted blanket on the couch that had been Emma's mother's, and the radiator knocked reliably, and the overhead light was warm. Harold and Eleanor stood in the doorway of that apartment with the careful stillness of people who have learned not to expect too much from the world. And then something seemed to settle in both of them, some long-held tension going out like a breath, and Eleanor said, very quietly, "What a lovely home." She meant it. Emma could tell she meant it. Lily served the pasta with the serious focus of a 9-year-old who considers hospitality a technical challenge. She had set the table with the good plates. There were only 4, a matched set Emma's mother had owned, and had folded the paper napkins into approximate triangles, which she clearly felt was the sophisticated choice. Over dinner, Harold and Eleanor talked, slowly at first, and then with more ease, about Maplewood. About the house they'd lived in for 41 years, about Harold's retired hardware store, which was now a cell phone shop, a fact he reported with the mild philosophical acceptance of a man who has made his peace with change. About their garden. Eleanor's tomatoes were by her account locally famous, and Harold confirmed this with the solemn nod of a man who knows when a claim requires no embellishment. They talked about Richard when Lily asked about him, because Lily had the direct, clear-eyed honesty of a child who does not yet understand why some questions are not supposed to be asked. "Is your son nice?" Lily said. Harold and Eleanor looked at each other across Emma's kitchen table. The look lasted just a moment too long. "He works very hard," Eleanor said. Lily considered this answer with the tilted head expression. "That's not the same thing," she said. Eleanor smiled. A small, sad, real smile. "No," she said softly. "It isn't." That night Emma gave Harold and Eleanor her bedroom. She slept on the couch. Lily, who had declared this a sleepover, slept on the floor beside her in a nest of blankets she had constructed with architectural ambition and great enthusiasm. Before she went to sleep, Lily pressed a folded piece of paper into Eleanor's hand. Eleanor unfolded it carefully. It was a drawing, a yellow house with a big garden and 4 stick figures standing out front, 2 large and 2 small, all smiling. Beneath it, in Lily's handwriting, "You can share our home. We have enough." Eleanor held that piece of paper for a very long time before she folded it back up and placed it carefully in her handbag, next to her heart. The next morning, over coffee, Harold produced the bus ticket. He had kept it, the way careful people keep important documents, folded precisely in the inside pocket of his wallet. He placed it on Emma's kitchen table with the quiet dignity of a man presenting evidence he wishes did not exist. The ticket was printed. Clear, dated October 22nd, with a confirmation number and a printout timestamp from 3 weeks prior. Emma studied it for a long moment. She had not doubted Harold for a moment, had not from the first instant believed there was any genuine confusion about the date. But holding the ticket in her hands made the truth feel heavier, more solid, more undeniable. She excused herself and called Officer Garcia from the hallway. Garcia, who had followed the situation with the bemused empathy of a man who has heard most of what people are capable of, confirmed that Richard Winters had been reached the previous night and informed of his parents' situation. Richard had told the officer it was a mix-up. Garcia had documented the interaction and could do nothing further. No law had been broken. A grown son failing to collect his elderly parents was not, legally speaking, a crime. But if the family needs resources, Garcia said carefully, there are social services. They're not lost, Emma said. They know exactly where they are. It's their son who's lost. She went back inside. Harold was helping Eleanor with her tea, steadying the cup with both hands, the specific tenderness of a man who has been paying attention to one woman for 52 years. Lily was showing Eleanor her drawings, narrating each one with the focused intensity of a professional curator. Emma sat down. She looked at Harold. "Mr. Turld. Winters," she said, "has this happened before?" The pause was its own answer. Harold set down his coffee cup. He looked at his hands. He was a precise, dignified man, and Emma could see the effort it cost him to say what he said next. Because men like Harold Winters, who built things with their hands and kept their word and raised their family on a hardware store in a small Ohio town, did not easily say things that made their town. Sons look small. "The last visit was Christmas," he said. 18 months ago. There have been some times when plans changed, when things came up." He paused. "We try not to put pressure on him. He is very busy." "Harold," Eleanor said softly, "not a reprimand. A caution. She deserves to know," Harold said. He looked at Emma. "We are not naive, young lady. We know that something changed with Richard some years back when he started earning the kind of money he earns. We don't know exactly when it changed. You don't always notice a tide going out until the shore is bare." He looked at the ticket on the table. "But we had hoped. We continue to hope. That is perhaps our great foolishness." "It's not foolishness," Emma said. "It's love." She picked up her phone. She called Richard Winters directly, not for a welfare check, Not through anyone else. She called him, and he answered, perhaps because he did not recognize her number, perhaps because some part of him had been expecting this call. She did not raise her voice. She was 19 years old, working a diner shift in nursing school on 3 hours of sleep, and she spoke to Richard Winters with the precise, clear, quiet authority of a person who has decided that someone needs to say the truth plainly. She told him that his parents had been sitting in the rain for 5 hours. She told him about the ticket and the date and the confirmation number. She told him that his mother had folded her hands in her lap and looked at nothing because she was trying very hard not to cry in public. She told him that his daughter, she paused, that his father's hands had trembled when he handed her the phone. She told him that her 9-year-old daughter had made room at her table for 2 strangers because a child understands, even when an adult forgets that love is about showing up. Silence on the line. Mr. Winters, Emma said, you parents are not going to be here forever. I say that with respect and with sorrow, because I lost my mother 3 years ago, and I would give everything I have to sit at a table with her one more time. You have that chance. Please don't waste it. More silence. When Richard spoke, his voice was different, not transformed, not immediately, miraculously changed, because real people are not transformed by one phone call, and Emma was too honest to believe in that kind of story. But it was different, smaller, quieter. I'll drive up tomorrow, he said. He came the next afternoon. Emma had not told Harold and Eleanor that she had called Richard again, or what she had said. She had only told them that she believed he would come, and Harold had looked at her with that careful, weathered hope, and Eleanor had squeezed her hand. The day Richard was supposed to arrive, Emma worked her diner shift and came home to find Eleanor sitting on the couch teaching Lily how to crochet, or attempting to, through a great deal of laughter over Lily's first efforts, which resembled, as Lily herself observed, a medium-sized knot with ambitions. Harold sat in the armchair with a cup of tea and a contented expression, watching the two of them, and the apartment felt, in that moment, like a place where something important had taken root. Richard arrived at 3:15. Emma heard the knock and opened the door, and she saw him for the first time, a man of 27 in a dark wool coat, well cut and expensive, with his father's height and his mother's careful eyes, though on him the carefulness looked like control rather than composure. He was holding white flowers. He was not comfortable holding them. He stood in the doorway of a stranger's apartment, in a building that was nothing like his own building, and he looked like a man who has driven 4 hours to do something he does not quite know how to do. Miss Collins, he said. Come in, Emma said. He stepped inside. The moment Harold looked up from the armchair, something shifted in the room. Emma felt it like a change in air pressure. Harold rose to his feet, slowly, carefully, with the measured effort of a man whose knees no longer cooperate the way they once did, and stood and looked at his son. Richard looked at his father. Lily, who had been watching all of this from the couch with her characteristic head tilt, said, Are those flowers for your mom? Richard looked at his daughter, at Lily. Yes, he said. Then, after a small pause, and to say thank you to your mother, he gave Eleanor the flowers. Eleanor held them with both hands. The way she held things she was trying not to drop, and then her face did something complicated in private, and she pressed them against her chest. Richard sat down. Emma put on coffee because that was what you did, and because it gave everyone in the room something to do with their hands while the hardest things were being said. What happened over the next hour was not a perfect reconciliation. Emma would not have believed it if it were. Real families do not heal in one afternoon, the way fictional ones do. What happened was more fragile and more real than that. Richard talked. It came out haltingly, in the way things come out when a person has not said them in a very long time. He had been ashamed, he said, of things. It was not entirely clear what things, and perhaps he was not entirely clear himself. Success that had come faster than he expected and that cost more than he admitted. A life that had gotten very polished and very empty. Phone calls with his parents that made him feel, he said with some difficulty, like the distance between the life he had and the life they understood had become too wide to cross. So he had stopped trying to cross it. Harold listened. His face was quiet and very attentive. You didn't have to cross it, Harold said when Richard had finished. We would have met you wherever you were. The silence after that sentence lasted a long time. Lily, who had decided that this was a moment requiring practical action, brought out a plate of crackers she had assembled on a saucer with the presentation style of a very serious child. Everyone took one. It helped. Emma watched from the kitchen doorway. She did not feel that this moment was hers. It belonged to the Winters, and she gave it to them. But she filed it away, every second of it, for the days ahead when she would need to remember that things can turn, that the distance between people is not always permanent, that sometimes all it takes is one person saying, "This matters. You matter. Show up." Richard stayed 3 days. He slept on the couch, Emma's couch, because the apartment had no guest room and because he had not, it turned out, booked a hotel. He bought groceries for the apartment, which he did quietly and without fanfare, and which Emma accepted without protest, because she had learned that refusing an act of genuine contrition is its own kind of unkindness. On the second day, he sat at Emma's kitchen table while she studied and said, with some awkwardness, that he would like to help, with the nursing program, with the costs. He said it in the way of someone who has money and has learned, somewhat late, that there are things money can actually be used for. Emma looked at him for a long moment. "I'm not telling you this so you'll do something for me," she said. "I called you because it was the right thing to do, not a transaction." "I know," Richard said. "This isn't the transaction either. My parents are alive because of you, not physically, but—" He stopped. "Tried again. You gave them dignity when I didn't. That is worth more than I can repay, but I'd like to try to help if you'll let me." Emma said she would think about it. She thought about it. She said yes, not to charity, but to a loan she intended to repay, with a handshake that Richard honored, and that allowed her to reduce her diner shifts from 4 to 2 and add 2 extra study sessions per week. She graduated from Claremont Community College's nursing program 14 months later, 4th in her class. But that is getting ahead of the story. On the third morning, Richard loaded his parents' suitcases into the back of his car. Harold shook his hand, and then, after a pause, pulled him into a careful hug. The hug of a tall old man and a younger one, who are relearning how to do this. Eleanor kissed his cheek. Then Eleanor turned to Emma. She held Emma's face in both her hands, small, cool, steady hands, and looked at her for a moment. "You missed your bus," Eleanor said. "Yes," Emma said. "And your shift, yes. And you gave us your bedroom and your daughter made us pasta, and you told my son the truth when no one else would." Eleanor's clear blue eyes were steady. Why? Emma considered this seriously, the way she considered things that deserved a real answer. "My mother used to say that the right thing is usually the one that costs you something," she said finally. I think she was right. Eleanor held her face for another moment. Then she said, "Your mother raised an extraordinary person." She meant it. Emma could tell she meant it. Lily came flying from the apartment door in her yellow raincoat. It was not raining, but she had decided to wear it anyway for the occasion, and wrapped her arms around Eleanor with the complete, unself-conscious force of a child who has decided someone belongs to her. Eleanor laughed. It was a full, surprised, real laugh, the laugh of a woman who had not laughed like that in some time. Harold pressed a small envelope into Emma's hand as he got into the car. Inside was a card, written in his precise, careful handwriting. It said, "To Emma and Lily, who showed us that a stranger's kitchen table can be the warmest place in the world, with all our gratitude and our hope that the world gives back to you what you have given to it. Harold and Eleanor Winters." Emma stood on the sidewalk and watched the car pull away. Lily slipped her hand into Emma's. "Mom," Lily said. "Yeah, Bug. We did a good thing." "We did," Emma said, "even though it was hard." Emma looked down at her daughter, 9 years old in a yellow raincoat on a bright October morning, looking up at her with her grandmother's eyes. "Especially because it was hard," Emma said. "That's usually how you know it was the right one." Lily considered this with a solemn nod. Then she said, "Can we get hot chocolate?" Emma laughed, a real laugh, surprised and full. "Yeah," she said, "I think we've earned it." Emma Collins was 19 years old. She was tired. She was behind on her studies. She had exactly enough money, enough time, enough energy for her own life, and not a single drop more. And yet, She sat down on a bench beside two strangers in a bus terminal. She missed her bus. She brought them home. She fed them pasta. She gave them her bed. She made a phone call that an entire adult son had refused to make, and she asked for nothing in return, not because she was a saint, but because her mother had taught her, on a refrigerator note and a crocheted blanket and a lifetime of showing up, that this is simply what we owe each other. The lesson of Emma's story is not complicated. It does not require a philosophy degree or a large bank account or any particular talent. It only requires this, that when you see someone sitting alone in the rain, waiting for someone who isn't coming, you stop. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to be able to fix anything. You only have to sit down and say, "I see you. You are not invisible to me. I am here." Harold and Eleanor Winters were not abandoned by a monster. They were abandoned by a man who had gotten lost in the distance between the life he lived and the people who loved him, and who needed someone to call him back across that distance. Emma called him, clearly, kindly, without malice and without flinching. And he came. There are Harolds and Eleanors in every city. In every bus terminal and waiting room and park bench, there are sons and daughters who have drifted, not from cruelty, but from distraction, from shame, from the great modern busyness that lets us mistake activity for meaning. And there are Emmas, too, more than we know. Young people, tired, stretched thin, carrying everything, who stop anyway, who make room at a small table, who fold the paper napkins into triangles because hospitality is worth doing with care, even when resources are thin. Be the person who stops. Be the Emma. The table you make room at might be the one that changes everything. For someone else, and, without your knowing it, for you. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you love, or someone you've been, or something you want to be, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and if you're new here, subscribe so you never miss a story worth telling. Because stories like Emma's are everywhere. We just have to learn to see them. Until next time, be kind, be present, and never ever miss your bus for a reason you'll regret.